Welcome, beautiful people, and thank you for joining us on Till the Wheels Fall Off, a podcast by two folk couple. I'm Matt.
And I'm Paige.
And we're here to inspire others, to bring you guys into our lives and tell you a little bit about our journey. Over 20 years together, we've learned a few things.
We're going to work toward being the best version of yourself possible. We're going to dig into building a positive mindset, discuss mental health, addiction recovery, improving fitness, building businesses, and insight into what it takes to navigate life today.
Welcome back to another episode of Till the Wheels Fall Off. I'm Matt.
I'm Paige.
Today we're talking about the realities of recovery. We've talked about this before, but we're going to handle things a little more direct this time, be a little more blunt about this process. Y'all, this is a years-long process. This is not something that fixes itself in a matter of weeks or months or even year. We're talking multiple years. We're going to get into what it takes to rebuild. I mean, in early recovery especially, it's a lot to rebuild. You're still reeling from the damage that addiction caused you. There's a deep rupture in trust. There's no communication. There's no emotional connection. That stuff just doesn't heal on its own. It's a very volatile time for both you and the person recovering from the substance use disorder. Emotions are raw. You're unsure of what the future holds. You're figuring out your new roles, and you're building a new relationship. We're going to get into what it took for us to rebuild, often some of the pitfalls that we see people fall into, the do's and don'ts, how to tell when this is real, if it's worth investing in, and if it's okay to hang it up if you don't have it in you. We're going to get through all of this.
Yeah, and this episode isn't just for those with a partner in recovery. This is for those who are still with someone in active addiction as well, so you can get an idea of what recovery may mean for you if your partner does choose that route.
Yeah, if you get to that point, this is some of the things you can expect to see. All right, but first, hey, we've got a newsletter / blog. I'm not sure what it is yet because I'm posting it as a newsletter and a blog. If you go to our website, tufo.com, it's www.twfo.com, head over to the very bottom of that page and put in your email address. Now, at the top of the page, if you're on a phone, it's the little cheeseburger logo. I call it a cheeseburger. It's 3 stacked horizontal lines. It's like the menu button.
Oh, yeah.
People call it the cheeseburger, and I just like that.
That's cute.
Anyway, click that and you can go over to the blog. I will post these as a newsletter and a blog, so they're accessible from the past. I have to go back and retroactively add a bunch of these things, and it's a lot, and I'm just slow about doing it, but I promise you,
I think you've been
I will
sending
get all
like
of them up.
a newsletter and a blog on a Monday. Is that what's happening?
Yeah, it's like the last one from the previous week posts as a blog, and then there's a new newsletter.
Did you have that set up before, or are you
No,
doing
it's
that?
just manual
kind of
labor, man.
Okay.
I'm just figuring it out. I'm just trying to figure it out. We've also got we've got a need. We've got a request. We've got a favor to ask you guys. If you haven't rated and reviewed the show, we would very much appreciate it on whatever podcast app you use to listen to us, but also on YouTube as well. We're trying to grow our YouTube channel, and we need your help over there. If you could, just leave us a review, leave a comment, subscribe to the show. It helps us grow. It helps exposure for the show, and it helps other people that are in need of something like this find it. It makes it easier to discover. It's the world of algorithms and SEO and keywords and all the stuff that I can't stand dealing with. Oh, it's such a beating.
And on YouTube, it's not the best setup, but we do everything ourselves, so bear with us.
Stick with us. We'll keep getting better, I promise you. But we'd appreciate your help with that. If you haven't already, leave us a review. Rate the stars, follow the show, subscribe to the show. Depending on the app, it's all different. All the things.
Thank you.
That's all we ask. We've got a course called Independently Strong. This new motto I'm working on for it is stay or go, but always grow.
It's so cute. I love it.
So the course is designed to help you find clarity in your life, whether you stay or go. So we empower spouses and partners of people that have substance use disorders who've sacrificed their needs for someone living in addiction. Many people come to us feeling completely lost. They're unsure if they should stay in their relationship or leave it behind. And we don't offer a one-size-fits-all solution. Rather, we offer a process that's going to help you make informed, confident decisions about your future. We use a process we call VEER. VEER is is that a verb? Verb is that an adjective? I don't know. It means to change direction, okay? Which is what we're ultimately trying to do. The old direction was not working. We can agree on that. VEER. Validate. We're going to provide you a safe space to express your emotions like fear, frustration, resentment, anger, all the stuff that you've been told you're not allowed to express. You are allowed to express it with us. We're going to talk about it with you. And that's when healing begins, is when you've acknowledged the pain, acknowledged what you've gone through.
Heard.
Next, we're going to educate you. We're going to use social learning theory and addiction education to help people untangle the confusion around addiction to gain a clearer understanding of what it is, its behaviors, what it is, what it isn't, and some of the realities of it, which we'll also cover in this episode.
Yes.
We empower you through self-care, boundary setting, personal growth. We help you shift focus inward to regain control over your own life, regardless of whatever the person in your life that you love is doing. Finally, we will help you recover armed with confidence. People can now make decisions about their relationship, whether repair it or leave, based on clarity, not confusion. Our program offers hope to those wanting to rebuild the relationship, showing what real recovery looks like and how a healthy, equal partnership can be restored. At the same time, we support those who recognize that not every relationship can or should be saved. We are going to help you get the strength you need to leave if necessary, but from a place of empowerment, not fear. Our goal is that regardless of the decision you make, it comes from a place of confidence, not fear or uncertainty or guilt or shame or any of those things. We want to restore you, help you find yourself again so you can make decisions from a place that you can trust. That's simply it. That's what the course accomplishes. You can get 75% off using the code Wheelies75. That's Wheelies with an S, 75.
Dang, Boo, you crushed that. Good job.
I've had to clarify our message a lot lately for the website.
Yeah, we're redoing the website.
It's been a fun venture.
It's been great.
We've also got a community. It's totally free. You can go to our website, www.twfo.com. Again, click the cheeseburger. Look for the one that says community, and it takes you to our free Facebook community. Answer a few short questions, and you're in. You're in. Our favorite community members are those that listen to the podcast. It's true. Not that I hate on the TikTokers, but a lot of times TikTokers just watch one video for 2 minutes and they come in and they start asking questions that we've answered in probably a dozen episodes. Please listen to the podcast.
Yes, and even if an episode doesn't speak to you based on the title, I've seen a lot of people say, I didn't want to listen to this one because the title didn't seem like it fit. And then they listen to it and they're like, whoa, that is my life. So listen to it. Even if the topic does not stand out, there is something in every single episode that we discuss.
Yep. We've got merch on the website as well. We've got hats, stickers, shirts. We've got a few sweatshirts.
Some sweatshirts.
I've got to restock sweatshirts.
We got to restock a lot of stuff. Rocks are a hit.
Rocks are a hit. Rocks are doing great. I think it's so cool sending those things out and people are ordering them. If you don't know what a recovery rock is, I've got it. Is it up here somewhere?
It's right here.
Okay, recovery rock. If you're on YouTube, you might be able to see this thing. It's got our logo on the front. On the back, it says, "Thank you for being my rock." This
we have
is
pictures
a
on the
token
website too.
to acknowledge someone's role in your recovery. If they've been there for you through thick and thin, when you didn't deserve the support, but you got it anyway, that's a really kind way to say, I see you, I hear you. And it also means that you listen to the episodes, which means that you're actually invested in their journey.
Yes.
Which says something.
That right there.
I think that's it. Yeah.
For real?
I think so. Yeah. We talked about the course, which is, oh, by the way, it's an alternative to things like Al-Anon.
Yes.
It works well with it.
We want people to get help anywhere they can and from all the different places, but it is different than what's out there.
It is. It's different. That was the point.
And people are getting more help quicker through this process. It's pretty cool to watch. Oh, I do host calls on Wednesday evenings for those that are in the course.
Called meetings, really.
Meetings, yes. Oh yeah, I need to change that.
Yeah, they're
thank you to the
more
awesome
like
Wheelie
meetings.
who suggested that. They are meetings through Zoom, and then we also in the community we have some Wheelies who host meetings on Tuesdays and Thursdays that are for people in the community.
Member led.
Yes, member led.
Awesome.
Yeah, they're great. They're great, and it's all growth oriented is what we're trying to do here.
All right, let's get into it.
Okay,
the realities of this thing.
Yeah,
the reality. We're gonna shoot you straight.
Okay, so this was kind of a topic that popped up on TikTok. And people were asking me questions, and I was like, you know what? I can't really do a 3-minute TikTok video on this topic. I'm going to have to do a podcast episode. And I do believe that we've touched on this before, like Matt said earlier, but we're just going to switch it up a little bit and maybe nail it a little bit harder.
Yeah.
Whatever that term is. You know what I'm trying to say. And you know how many times I've heard some Wheelies say to me, well, that's not happening to us. They will get sober and everything will be great.
Oh yeah, everyone. I mean, I
like
think
when
that
they
I
hear
felt
our
that way
story,
too.
when
Yeah.
they hear our story. Yeah. And I was going to say, yeah, I thought the same thing. Like I thought, okay, yeah, he's sober. Okay, let's start over. Things will be great. We're going to just do this, but that's not how it works.
No, we always think we're the exception, not the rule.
Yeah. I mean, life doesn't happen like that. We can't just start over. Things have to be addressed, or everything we dealt with during active assholeness will come out in super unhealthy ways.
Active assholeness, I like that.
Yeah, well, I kind of changed the addiction thing because we were focusing on behaviors a lot more instead of addiction. So I like to say it was active assholeness because I always thought you were an asshole.
Yeah, I
right?
was an asshole.
Like I thought that I married an
That's
asshole.
fair.
And I know
Fair
that some
assessment.
people hear this and they're like, I don't want to be an asshole. And I think that clicks a little bit harder than saying addiction or saying an addict.
Yeah, I mean, what you've got is a very, very dysfunctional relationship dynamic. You've got someone who's a substance abuser and they have their own set of issues. Those are familiar to many of us: the lying, the deceitfulness, the detachment, sometimes just the absence. Sometimes they just disappear on you. Sometimes they're blowing through finances. They're just a shell of their former self. And on the flip side, spouses and partners are dealing with their own set of issues. Mm-hmm. They've spent years and years in survival mode, dealing with lies, manipulation,
betrayal,
sometimes even abuse, betrayal.
All the
They've
things.
had to drop their standards, to where the bar is just barely off the floor.
Right.
And just because someone gets sober doesn't mean that your wounds heal overnight. And this is where a lot of people find themselves, especially early on. It's like, I can't tell you how many times I've read something to the effect of, hey, my husband is 100 days sober and this is hell on earth. Like, this sucks because I still don't trust him, because I still feel like I'm walking on eggshells. I'm still so scared of a relapse. And I'm not even sure if this like new version of him is real or not. Like, what's real, what's not, what's consistent? Can I count on this? Is there any guarantee in this?
Yeah.
And it's just a scary place. It's a scary time in your life, in your relationship, because there is no certainty. If there's anything you're going to learn in this episode at all, is that there's no such thing as a guarantee.
Yeah. And once I get sober, if we haven't really been working on some of the things, well, it's really hard to deal with our own shit whenever they're still actively using. But we get out of that survival mode that we've been in for so long, and then we begin to feel a bit safer in a way. But all the things start to come out that we were holding in.
Yeah.
The anger, the triggers, the anxiety, the resentment, all that stuff is going to come out more whenever things start to slow down within your relationship. And that's just, that's the reality of this.
I found this to be true in work as well. And anyone who's in any kind of profession, you can probably relate. When things are really, really busy, no one talks about the stupid little mistakes. No one focuses on the fact that, like, I'm in shipping, like the truck is 3 hours late. No one cares, because you've got other things to worry about. You've got crises to manage.
Yes.
But when things
chaos.
slow down, people start noticing every little detail about what's wrong.
Yeah.
And they want to hark on it and have meetings about it. And that's just human nature, I think, because
I think so too.
when we're in crisis, we prioritize. Our brains are really good at prioritizing. Mm-hmm. And like the little things just aren't that important. We'll deal with that. But we've said it before here, and I'll say it again: emotions buried alive never die. This stuff has to be dealt with at some point.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it
just
will
like
come
mine
back.
Came out 5 years after you were sober. Right?
4
years. It was 4 years. My
y'all.
years are getting messed up. So y'all don't like go back and say, oh, I thought it was 5 years
It's
or
been
4
a
years.
minute.
No, but it was 4 years, I believe, because it was 2017 when shit hit the fan for me.
Yeah, it takes
because
a long
I held
time.
a lot of things in, and I became super overwhelmed with being a young mom as it was, that all of that coming in together just made me lose my shit.
Mm-hmm.
So, but here's the reality of recovery: is that it is a very long process. And I kind of have a theory on this, and I don't know if this is accurate or whatnot, but this is our experience that I believe I've mentioned before. But let's say that your partner started abusing drugs or alcohol at the age of 16, and they got sober and worked on recovery at the age of 26. Okay. That's 10 years of active addiction. They have all of those years to make up. That all of those years missed of working on themselves and growing the fuck up, which means it can take that long to unravel all the shit.
Yeah, I like that frame too, because it's simple for people to understand. And I don't know if it's a 1-to-1 ratio. Listen, we haven't studied it. This is just an observation.
This is just an observation.
But it's like the arrested development theory, basically, of addiction,
Mm-hmm.
where when you're not present dealing with life and all of the challenges that everyone else who's not completely junked up all the time has to deal with, you're not learning how to deal with your emotions. You're not learning how to process anything. You're not learning what real healthy relationship dynamics looks like, because you're often just faking it and you're just half-assing everything. And so whenever you remove this stuff and suddenly you're just, you're kind of faced with all of this crap at once. And I do think there's something to that. From 17 to 27, I was an active. I got sober the day before my 27th birthday. And when I got sober, I felt like I had the tools of like freaking 18-year-old kid.
Right.
That's literally what I felt like.
Right. And your behaviors didn't fully unravel for at least 8 years of sobriety.
Let me ask you, didn't it feel like you were married to an 18, 19-year-old?
Yeah. I mean, even like a few years ago, I felt like I was married to a 22-year-old, Like I think of all the things that you were into. Like
what? Dude, you can't hate on that. She's pointing at my bookshelf over here of all my like collectible art and stuff.
But you have to you have to recognize that it's a bit juvenile.
Hang on, I'm gonna grab this thing real quick.
I mean it's cool, and I went along with it, and I appreciate it, and I understand that you will never fully grow up.
Is a dog astronaut holding an ice cream cone
with
in, like, pop art.
With like stickers on he's wearing a bow tie and he's all colory and stuff. Like you've got.
I think this was like a Billionaire Boys Club collab with Steve Harrington, not the guy from Stranger Things.
Oh yeah, I was like, what?
He was pre-Stranger Things.
Okay, but I mean, you just went through these phases like children go through, and I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with that. But it just kind of I put that in.
No, we talked about it in our episode
mentality.
like switching addictions.
Yeah.
Like I don't know, like I got high highs and low lows.
Yeah.
And like I would just really get into something, and it's just, but it feels like you're dating a child, man.
Well, yeah, but then you even had like really poor behaviors throughout that time too, even in
still
sobriety.
Very immature.
Like there were some abusive tendencies.
Yeah, still like flipping out over anything. Like language was awful.
Gaslighting and just like kind of like very short fused and.
There's a lot of avoidance and a lot of like what's the term I'm looking for? Oh my God, I can't remember it. But basically like it was like gaslighting, but it was more like Darvo, right?
Yeah.
More like Darvo.
A lot of
Darvo type shit.
Right.
Like failure to take accountability.
Yeah. And
have a mature conversation about anything, really.
Right. But there were other things that you were working on, and that's why this is not, like we say, linear or whatnot. There were some things that I recognized, obviously, but the amount of time it took for you to actually recover from a lot of things was about the same amount of time that it took that you were in active addiction.
Yeah.
And active assholeness.
This is one of the big challenges I think early on is that many couples, and I just say couples, don't know how to communicate in healthy ways after years of addiction related dysfunction. Like arguments, resentments, miscommunication, those things ruled the relationship during active addiction. And now both people have to learn new skills just to interact in a healthy, productive way. And like all the problems of life are still there. Mm-hmm. Now you have this added layer of complexity where we have to learn how to be together again. Mm-hmm. Even if you are, let's say, you were much more emotionally intelligent and responsible and aware than me, but you didn't know how to interact with me, like in the couple, like in the relationship.
Yes.
So that's like brand new still. Even if you did have a leg up, no doubt. But still, it's difficult. You're talking about a relationship. It's like a living organism. It's always changing and shifting. It's such a hard process. And many people, like couples, don't have the tools or the guidance to navigate this period of time effectively. They don't. And many of them don't want to. Like it gets to the point where I've seen this more times than I can count when someone gets sober and it's like, I don't really think I'm into you anymore.
Yeah.
That happens a lot.
You've seen that a lot.
From either side.
I was going to say from either side, and that's okay. I want people to know that that's okay. You don't have to, just because somebody's choosing the path of recovery, it doesn't mean that you have to stick around for that to see how it goes. You don't. It's okay to be done. Sometimes there's too much that has been done for you to restart from scratch.
You can total a relationship just like you can total a car.
Yeah, you can.
You can tear it up to the point where it's not worth repairing anymore.
So
it's going to take longer to repair this than we would ever get useful life out of it.
Yeah, and I just want to validate those who feel like they have left their partners in recovery and they're like, well, what if they're going to get better?
There's no guarantee they do.
There is no guarantee. We'll have an episode on what ifs. I had an awesome wheelie that I met for lunch last week who suggested we do an episode on what ifs, and I think that is a really good topic.
That is a good one, man. You can what if all day long.
Yeah. We'll get through that on another episode. But I just want to validate you guys and let you know that if you feel like you're done, even if somebody's in recovery, it's okay. You don't have to have a specific reason to leave something that is not comfortable for you anymore.
Yeah.
You don't have to have a specific reason. We have all these rigid rules in life, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like if you can't do this and you can't do that, you can't leave because they're working on themselves. How dare you give up on them when they're doing that? When in reality, you don't have to have a reason. It could be like, you know what? There's just way too much damage that's been done.
Yeah. And if you think about it, like what kind of dynamics were at play whenever the addiction was ongoing, right? If you're a spouse or you're a partner of someone who has a substance use disorder, you are in survival mode. You are a crisis management PhD. That's what you do, is you manage crisis after crisis. You find a way somehow to keep that family and that household afloat and somehow keep yourself sane and keep this person from not destroying everything. And it's a full-time job. And then it stops. And so what you're left with, we talked like emotions buried alive, never die. One of the things we'll talk about is enabling behavior. Mm-hmm. Some people call it codependency. I always hated that label. I don't think it's fair to label people codependent, because if you go and look at what codependent behaviors are,
there's like 4 pages of this.
It's so
it's
much
like
shit.
Everybody has these type of characteristics.
It turns into ADHD diagnosis.
Right.
Everyone.
Yeah.
Like you might have trouble memorizing 6 pages at a time. Well, I do. You might be ADHD.
Right.
It's like, okay, anyone could have this. But what we're talking about is someone that's had to manage and fix everything for survival.
Yes.
Not just for convenience, for survival. All right. Constantly trying to control someone else's behavior to protect them from consequences and outcomes that could harm not just them, but you, your children, and your household. That doesn't just go away day one. You are still going to have tendencies to want to fix things because that has been your pattern in this relationship for however many years. Mm-hmm. It has been going on. It's really hard to let go of the reins and trust somebody again.
Yeah.
It's really, really, really freaking hard. So even in recovery, like this dynamic continues and it's going to cause issues. This is an unhealthy relationship dynamic. It is not balanced. You are going to still feel overwhelmed. They are probably still going to allow some form of enablement because we can't function fully. Mm-hmm. And it's just unhealthy. Another one is resentment and blame. This is another one of these like dynamics that exist. And we talk about resentment. Like, let's get into it a little bit, because this is one thing that for the longest time you didn't really have.
No, I didn't. It came in waves, and I never really knew exactly what I was resentful for specifically, but it didn't show up until later on. Because like I said, I thought I had the mentality of like, you got sober. So I was just one of those like, oh, I'm grateful he's sober, so let's just move on. Because I didn't understand until things kept happening and the behaviors kept happening. And then I was like, oh, well, I think I do have some resentment here.
What are you resentful for? Like, what were you resentful for? You might still be. I don't know.
The lies and the betrayal and the, when you would gaslight me and say that you would change things so that I wouldn't recognize it, like the whole toll tag thing, like that was one thing that like sticks with me for some reason. And I think you did that a lot. And then not being around when I needed you. And, there was a lot of things. I'm not resentful anymore because you acknowledged all these things.
I think
so. I've let those go.
I don't want to speak for you, but I can speak for a lot of other people. Kind of sum these up. What's up? You're gonna say something.
I was thinking about whenever the kids were younger, and I didn't have much help there.
Yeah, that's kind of falls into this category of like stolen time, mm-hmm. time that you'll never get back, ever. You'll never get that experience back to have someone there with you in that mud. You were all by yourself. There's also like this concept of stolen innocence. Like I was so naive, and it was a beautiful thing because I believed that you were good. I believed that I could trust you, and you showed me that there was nasty in the world. You mm-hmm. showed me that there was like evil that exists in this world, and I'll never get that back. Some part of you will always be jaded to some degree mm-hmm. because of that. So it's stolen time. Sometimes it's actual actions too. It can be like a physical assault or something like that. Like you don't forget that shit.
No.
Like you might you might forgive it, but you'll never forget it.
Yeah.
It will always be there, and it will always affect you in some way.
Exactly.
And you don't just let go of that stuff right away, y'all.
No, you don't. No. And some of that stuff will be with you forever.
And there's a pink cloud we refer to in recovery. It's like the first 6 months or so. Everything's great. It's freaking awesome. It's like, oh man, we're doing it. And everything's wonderful.
It depends on the dynamics. Some people, they're like immediately struggling, but then there are some who have that pink cloud. There will be a pink cloud.
People get this pink cloud and you think, hey, it's
things are great.
It's temporary.
It's great. It's
I'll tell you
awesome.
that right now. It's temporary.
Right. But you know what? That's life too. And that's how I looked at a lot of stuff with that.
Yeah, there are ups and downs.
Ups
and it's
and downs,
just,
yeah.
But you can be fooled to think that you made it out of the clear. Like you're out of the woods and you're really not out of the woods.
Yeah.
Not at all. Another one that is very present is the avoidance and the emotional walls. So a lot of couples, if they've dealt with addiction and these unhealthy relationship dynamics, we had a lot of this, is you learn to avoid really difficult conversations altogether just to keep peace. So like we've always been really close and we've always talked. And we credit the fact that we were together for a long time before addiction to probably the reason we made it out the other side. And also the fact that, we were young.
Yeah, we were very young.
We were 20s. We were in our 20s,
Yeah.
we weren't 40, 50 years old dealing with this shit. Like we didn't have, it was still a long time, don't get me wrong, but like in the grand scheme of things, relative to a lot of people that we see, it was a fairly short period of time, like 10 years or so. And we've always talked, but you get to a point where you don't really go there anymore over certain topics. You just don't, because it gets so volatile so quickly. And you get used to not talking about big stuff. You become a people pleaser just to keep the peace.
Do you remember, I used to say this to you and our friends, this was even not recently, but I guess like even in your sober years, where it's like, I don't argue with you. Like I couldn't fight with you.
It's just not worth it.
It wasn't worth it. I got to a point where I was just like doing whatever the hell you wanted to do, because you would always debate. Like it would always be a debate. It would always be something. I'm like, I can't, it's not even worth it. It's not worth it. I'm just going to do whatever the hell you want to do and keep my mouth shut, because it's just going to become a fight. That's not even worth it in my mind.
It's like dealing with an 8-year-old almost.
It is.
Would they just wear you out?
It
It's
is.
like, you know what? Just have the cookie. I don't even care.
But it took a long time for me to be able to actually, I still struggle with this sometimes. And you know that because we have these conversations where it's like, I'm still hesitant to speak up sometimes because I fear of what it's going to turn into.
Yeah, you have to pop your head out of the storm cellar and be like, is it safe?
But at this point,
I'm not sure.
At this point, it's on me. Because you've showed me multiple times throughout the years. You've earned that trust back to where I can speak up, but it's still something that is in the back of my mind that's going to be there.
And I'm still responsible for it. And for some people, there could lie some resentment in that too. That you can't be open anymore, that you can't be honest, that you can't just have a normal effing relationship anymore because of all this crap that has to be dealt with. But the avoidance creates emotional distance. Emotional distance creates a lack of intimacy. And this starts emotional intimacy, and then it turns into physical intimacy, and you're just not close. You're just sort of like roommates cohabitating in the same home or co-parenting or whatever it might be. But it prevents people from addressing the real issues in the relationship because you don't know how to talk about this stuff. Neither of you do. You don't want to address it because it's not worth the trouble. I don't know how to freaking operate as an adult, and I can't have mature conversations. So it just creates this unhealthy dynamic that does not disappear on day 1 or day 2 or 6 months in or 1 year in.
Well, especially if you are a person who has practiced detaching with love for a long time.
Yeah.
You have to learn how to reattach if you want to make that work. And that takes a long time. Somebody asked me that question, I want to say like a year ago. And I have not addressed this yet because it's not something that, I guess it kind of goes along with all this, honestly, is that how do you, after you've detached with love, how do you get back to where you were?
Yeah.
And it's like you have to completely rebuild from scratch and learn each other again.
I think if there's one theme I want people to understand, it's what you just said right there, is that part of this is a grieving process as well, because your relationship is now dead. Bury it in the ground. It will never be that way again.
No.
It will never be like that old one.
You don't want it to be that way though.
Some parts of it were good. And I think what sucks for spouses is that so much of their hopes and dreams were wrapped up in that old relationship.
The first
few
years.
one, when they fell in love, when they saw the potential that you were worth spending time with. But it's gone. It will never be the same again. It will never be the same. No. And you have to come to terms with that.
Right.
And that's a theme that you're right. It's like you have to come to terms with the fact that this will never be like it was.
Yeah. And it takes a long time to rebuild that.
It does.
And it's like it comes apart in layers. It's crazy.
Yeah, you have to learn how to confront your feelings again, and like individually, like I did, you did.
Right. And then together, and learn how to communicate differently, because you also have this way of, spouses do, they have a way of just reacting because they were living in that chaos, in that mind, in that survival mode where they would just react to things, or they wouldn't react at all. And then they have to learn, oh, am I able to speak up now? Can I speak up or no?
Is it safe?
Is it safe? Like, there's so much that goes into it when it comes to the communication piece.
A lot of what we see early on is like sort of like the naive pink cloud stage. I don't say that to be ugly. I just mean
this
like
this is reality.
Naive, like truly, you just don't know any better because you haven't had the experience yet. But you will deny and minimize so much of what actually took place, and you don't realize how bad that stuff really is, or how toxic it is, because when you're living amongst filth every day, it doesn't seem so filthy to you.
Nope.
You know,
I put that in my Page's perspective recently.
It's not until you go to a really clean home that you're like, oh wow. Like, I didn't even know this was an option.
Yeah.
I'm just so used to living in, you
normalize things and you minimize things.
Yeah. So I minimized everything that I did, right? It was like, oh, it's not so bad. We just had fights, we had disagreements, every couple fights. You spin bullshit like that. And you can convince yourself it wasn't really as bad as it was. And then you do the same,
Yeah.
You start with the same thing. You are your basis of comparison in a lot of ways. And so if you're comparing yourself to another couple that fights all the time, you're like, well, Brett and Susie figured it out. They're fine. I don't know who they are.
I know, that was
interesting
names you pulled out your ass there, babe.
But anyway, you're likely to deny how deeply and hurt that you actually are. And you think that you just need to be strong and forgive it without addressing your pain. But once again, emotions buried alive will never die. Kind of back to the codependent one or the enabling one, there's a caretaker role that a lot of spouses have to. It's like it's a survival skill at that point.
Some of them enjoy it, though, because it's part of their personality, to where it's their nurturing part.
That shit has an expiration date, though, and you can say that you like to do those things, and maybe that's true to some degree.
Well, if it's not reciprocated, it's gonna.
That's what I mean.
It's gonna wear on you.
That's what I mean. Like, even if your love language is acts of service, like this is how I show love.
No,
or receive love.
How you receive.
So if you feel like by doing kind things for other people, you have a purpose in life, and you feel useful, and like that makes you feel good. I understand that, but that shit has an expiration date. You will get burned out on that eventually.
Yeah, for sure.
And if you keep this going after the addiction, like the cool part about it is, I guess, is that you have a clean slate to start from, and it can be anything you want it to be, as long as both people are willing and on the same page. But if you are going to keep this going, that dynamic is going to exist long into the years, and it will wear on you. I promise. It will get old. Be on the lookout for that.
Think about how we have shifted. Like, I got to a point where I wasn't doing too much for you, because I was like, no, you're on your own. And even now, we're still trying to find that balance of doing things for each other. Man, like bringing a cup of coffee. Like, I like doing that, but I'm very like, don't do for others what they can't do for themselves,
can't
or whatever.
Too rigid with it,
but
though.
You can't.
Who doesn't appreciate a cup of coffee?
No, I understand that, and I enjoy doing that, and I enjoy doing these things. I make you dinner. I enjoy making your lunch sometimes. But think about how it's shifted since our relationship has gone through this stuff.
Yeah. Because
I help people detach a little bit, and because that's what I had to do. So it's hard for me to go back and do what I really want to do for you. I mean, I'm getting better at it, obviously, because we've done better with it.
Yeah, you have to be careful with it, because you know that it was a toxic dynamic before, and you kind of have to watch out for it. It's like, oh, am I doing it again?
Yeah.
And you have to check yourself, and it'll kind of drive you crazy. But there's this uneven balance where you might have been handling finances, managing the household. You were likely a single parent in many ways. God, I wrote a blog about that today, about all the...
So good. It was my favorite blog.
All the mannequin dads that are out there, just claiming they're such good dads, and they're not. They're just not, but they think they are. But you've been doing all this stuff, and you will have to address that dynamic at some point. You will have to address it. This has been going on. You may not even realize it. But also there's like this fear of change, and like this grief and this fantasy of what could have been that exists. And I think that you ought to talk about that a little bit, because there is a bit of grief associated. I remember the first bit of like, oh shit I remember thinking, like, when I checked into rehab, I was like, oh, we're those people now.
Oh yeah.
Like,
yeah. I had a lot of shame.
Like, we're one of those couples now. I'm
Yes.
one of those people.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm one of those people that like no one is totally comfortable being around if they're having a beer. Like, I'm not going to get invited to shit anymore. And by proxy, you won't get invited to shit anymore. Mm-hmm. And like, we just have to wear scarlet letters. And like, I fucked it all up. Now we're a weird recovery couple or some shit. You know, I hated it. I hated that.
Yeah.
And you have to mourn that a bit. There's grieving that goes along with that. And you have to decide if that's something you want to live with or not.
Absolutely.
And you don't have to.
Right.
You don't.
Yeah, but our dynamics changed with a lot of things within our life in recovery. Like, I was very close with my family to where I wanted to go to outings with them all the time. And I wanted to go to dinner with them. And I wanted to do all these things. But you were not the type of person to do that because you came from a much smaller family that didn't do things like that.
Plus, I like to sit at home and just
And you like
buzzed.
to sit and do anything. But even in recovery, it still shifted a little bit because I was doing those things on my own, or I decided not to go, or it's not what I expected our relationship to be. I thought that we were going to have like big family get-togethers and my kids would be able to have all these cousins and all these things. And it just didn't happen because we grew differently and like our relationship was in a different place. So I kind of had to mourn that. I had to grieve that. It's just different.
Time you'll never get back too.
Yeah.
Yeah. You'll go through that. You'll go through every bit of that. This is like the reality of recovery is that it fucking sucks. It's really, really hard. And it's not for the faint of heart. It's not. It's really, really difficult. I mean, it's not many people make it to the other side of this thing.
Yeah.
They just don't. And it's not for lack of effort. It's just sometimes these obstacles are too big to combat.
Well, people have asked us to find a couple who has gone through what we've gone through and stayed together to be on the podcast. And honestly, guys, it's really difficult to find those couples.
There's not many. Well, first of all, we got kind of different criteria than most. Like, we don't want a traditional, and this is no offense or no knock on anybody, but we don't want a traditional like religious couple that have done it.
Yeah.
And it's not to say that their path was any less valid.
No.
It's just not relatable to what we went through.
Right.
Because I think with that, like we talked about it in my newsletter anyway, I think that there's a lot of this kind of shove under the rug stuff where you're not necessarily held accountable as much as you are told to submit and to forgive and all this stuff. And I'm just like, I'm not so sure about the dynamic here.
Right.
And how healthy this relationship really is. Have you ever talked about this? And I'll just kind of look at you with blank face. Like, you guys haven't even talked about it, have you?
Right.
You never even addressed this.
Yeah.
And so it's tough to find people on the other side of it that have real conversations about it. And it's not for lack of trying. There's just not many of them out there, y'all.
Yeah.
There just aren't.
Right.
That really did the work and figured this out. They went the therapy route and like they've really done the exploration of what that relationship looked like, what happened, and what it's going to look in the future. And then to find two people that are have a congruent view of what the relationship needs to look like moving forward. People on the same page, because that's a big issue too. It's like when people get sober, a lot of these people go through these crazy midlife crises.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I need to reinvent myself. I need to get divorced. I need to go, travel Europe and backpack and join a band and like just all kinds of random shit. It's like people look at it as like a renewal of life, which is good in some ways, but like you have responsibilities. You can't just go be a child. But a lot of people do that and they just don't make it to the other side. They just discover like, I've really been using this person. I've been using my wife for, because it was comfortable and it was easy, but I haven't been in love with her in a long ass time.
That's so hard.
And they just don't make it out.
Yeah.
It just happens all the time.
And that is why it's important. This is why we do stress the importance of becoming empowered and really loving yourself and the self-care, because anything can happen. Anything can happen. Prepare yourself for anything to happen in these dynamics. They can leave you. You can leave them. They could relapse. There could be just any type of situation happens. You have to let go of the outcome you wished would happen and be prepared for any outcome to happen.
Let's shift into the fear of relapse now. That's a perfect segue.
Okay.
Do you want to go somewhere else first?
No, that's fine. That's my second one right here. We're gonna go through some questions and concerns that people put in the community based on this episode.
Okay.
But that's the one that we can go through real quick.
Okay.
The fear of relapse.
Fear of relapse is like probably the biggest question that we get. It's like, how do you ever get comfortable with the fear that they could relapse? Like, how do you ever get comfortable thinking that at any moment you could go right back to being the way it was? How do you stop
walking on
night?
Eggshells?
Yeah.
How do you get rid of the anxiety? How do you do all these things? And I did a TikTok on this today, which this is another one of those things where you can't do a 3-minute TikTok. You kind of just have to talk
People
about
don't
it.
watch those, man.
No, but what do you want me to tell you? Say my experience on this?
Absolutely.
Okay, so the fear of relapse was not one that I relate to as much because it was always based on behaviors and not substances within our relationship. I will know if you are close to relapsing because I know your behaviors, and that's what I'm going to focus on. To get over the fear of relapse, we have to be okay with any outcome, which is what I was just talking about, that protects us, which means being prepared to leave the situation if necessary, because relapse will always be a possibility in these relationships. And we can keep focusing on trying to get the outcome we want when reality shows us every day we have no control over this with our partners. We have control with what we do about it, which is set boundaries. At this point in our relationship, I don't fear a huge fight during a separation or divorce because we're mature enough to handle it like grown-ups since we've done a lot of work together. But you know that if you relapse, I will do anything to protect my kids from you. And this holds you accountable as well because you know I'm not playing on this.
I know. Yeah. So I think that you've always framed this beautifully, and it really helps detach from the substance itself. Mm-hmm. So I want all the listeners who have dealt with someone who's had a substance problem and they have known about the substance problem forever, and they have looked for bottles and they've looked for pills and they've looked for evidence and they've checked the bank statements and they've used Life 360 to pinpoint locations to find out when they're using. Pretend that you didn't know about it and you just noticed the behaviors. Pretend they were just a bigger asshole sometimes, and then other times they were just a little bit of an asshole.
Yeah.
And just pretend that that's what it looked like. It was just behaviors. They were just being really cagey sometimes. Sometimes they were being really like just manic and nuts, and they going crazy. And sometimes they're just really violent and angry. Just picture those are the symptoms, right? Mm-hmm. It's easier to walk away from that. It's easier to walk away from an asshole.
Yeah.
That's why you say it's you're
just an
active asshole.
Yeah.
You're just an asshole.
Yeah.
And I was just an asshole, period. And I will never tell you to excuse my assholeness because I was putting substances in my body.
Right.
Or for this disease. I will never, ever, ever, ever do that. It does not excuse my behavior. It does not excuse the way I treated you or anyone else in my life. So let's just start with that. Now think about relapse. So what are you really afraid of?
The behaviors to come back.
Is it easier to walk away from an asshole? Yes, it is.
It is. Because you know that they're going against your values.
Now, here's the problem that I think a lot of people have is that they want what they want.
Yes. They want the outcome that they want.
And they are not budging on that.
Yeah.
I want my marriage to work. I will not have it any other way. And my advice to you is good luck.
Yeah. So I when I talked about my video, I talked about faith, and I said that this is where I have faith in protecting myself and doing what I need to do to deal with whatever happens in life. It's not faith that my outcome will happen.
No.
It's not like I'm asking someone to make sure I get what I want. That's not how prayer works, in my opinion. It's more of like, give me the strength to get through whatever the hell happens to me. So if somebody relapses, if you relapse, I know that I'll be okay because I'm prepared for that, because I know that it's always going to be a possibility. Yeah. Life will always change. There's always going to be changes in life. You never know what can happen. We just have to be prepared for any outcome and quit hoping for just one outcome. That's what's going to get you through the relapse anxiety, is just being prepared. And it's not like a rigid preparation, right? It's not like I have this relapse plan that is like specific to what I'm going to do. It's just that I know what I'm going to need to do if it does happen.
That's a great way to put it. I think it's beautifully put too, because what you're doing essentially is you are prepping yourself for resilience. You're not prepping yourself for one outcome or the other.
Yeah.
And have no clue what you're going to do if you don't get the outcome that you desire. You're not optimizing for outcomes. You're optimizing for any outcome through the use of resilient tactics. You're trying to make yourself as resilient as possible. And some of that means admitting to yourself and breaking your own heart in advance that nothing lasts forever, period.
Yep.
If you're going to sit there and say, well, what if they relapse? How do you walk around? How do you deal with life knowing they could relapse? Okay, what about cancer? What about car accidents?
Exactly.
What about any number of things that could happen to someone on any given day? Guys, so much is out of our control.
Yeah.
It's our job, especially if you're a parent, to prepare yourself to carry forward regardless of what happens.
Think about the life we live in right now with our children and sending them to school.
It's so scary.
There are people who live with anxiety of sending their kids to school every day.
I mean, I think we all do to some degree.
Okay, yes, but it is not, I don't.
Not debilitating?
Hold that. I do not hold it. It's not debilitating. It's not something, it is completely out of my control. What am I going to shelter them forever? And try to protect them that way? That's not realistic for me or us. And it would suck if something happens, but my anxiety and worry is not going to change the outcome of any of that.
No.
All I can do is be prepared for anything that happens.
It's like they say that worrying is like pure torture.
It is.
Because you torture yourself before anything ever happens. And then if something does actually happen, you get tortured again.
You get tortured twice. So I just don't, I literally, I don't think about that stuff because I don't feel like it's necessary in my brain. I don't need that to take. I have other things I need to deal with. It's more important for me to deal with being grateful for things right now these days. I look at the things that I'm grateful for. If I have that relapse information in my brain all the time, I would drive myself nuts. And it's just, I'm not doing it. And I never really did that. There was a time when somebody close to you relapsed, and I was a little fearful. I remember we had a conversation about it. I remember that because I was like, "Oh, this is a little scary. This is a little too close to home." Yeah, but it wasn't like we had a conversation and that was it. It wasn't like it was every day I'm focusing on this and so scared that it's going to happen. Now, those who are feeling this way, I understand you and I hear you. I don't want to invalidate your experience, but I'm just explaining to you how I get through it every day because I know that relapse is always going to be, it could always happen. It could always happen in our relationship. And that's just something we all have to live with if you're going to stay stuck in this relationship.
Something else, and I'd suggest this to anybody that's in a relationship and they're on my side of this deal where they're in recovery and they've committed to a life of abstinence or whatever it is that you're doing for recovery, that whatever that looks like for you, is that you can save people a lot of worry if you just fucking communicate with them about where you're at and what's going on between your ears. Mm-hmm. It's the not knowing anything at all that I think drives people the craziest. Even with the slightest bit of assurance that I recognize that it is a possibility and here's what I'm doing about it today, people feel better about it. It's like an insurance policy in some ways. Yeah. It's like, hey, I'm still going to therapy. I'm reading this book. I have these new actions and new behaviors that I'm adopting. And yeah, I'm really working on this deal. And over time, you get trust based on actions. But if you're just left in the dark, it must be kind of freaky to know any day now, this is probably going to hit the fan. And that must be a kind of a scary place to live. But once again, we should be optimizing for resilience. That's the purpose of Independently Strong, not to plug it here, but that's what it does. It creates resilience. Yeah. And for a lot of people, that's what makes it incredibly tough to start. That's why it's so hard to start that course, is because in some ways you have to admit that outcome is possible, which is that you not getting what you want. Right. Which is your marriage not working out. But it won't be for your lack of effort.
Right. But that's not a bad thing. We look at it as such a bad thing, but it's once you're built up and you're resilient, you can handle anything that comes your way in a better way and an easier way, and you won't live with all this anxiety. Guys, I have not been a super anxious person in a long time. I'll have my moments. I'm human. Anxiety is a normal part of life. We all have anxiety for reasons. And sometimes, yes, when I have to talk with people, I get anxiety. But with things like this, I'm public speaking. I just don't have it because I'm prepared for whatever happens. And it will suck. I'm not saying that, but it's not something that I think about every single day. You're having a procedure done next week, maybe, supposedly. You will be having surgery at some point because
yeah.
your back, injections aren't working anymore.
Yeah, I gotta have surgery.
And we've had conversations about this where I'm like, yeah, this is kind of scary. This sucks, but we have a plan in place for whatever happens. But I have faith in you that you're going to get through it because you're fucking strong and you've worked your ass off to get through it, and we'll deal with it. And it doesn't mean like if you relapse, I'll leave you right then and there over something like that. But it's always a possibility, and we'll cross that bridge when we get there.
Yeah, I think that something I adopted early on in recovery is I'm just kind of developing my own emotional resilience was like, let's not troubleshoot a problem that we don't have right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like the problem doesn't exist right now, which doesn't mean you shouldn't prepare for a problem. It just means you don't have to troubleshoot it at this moment because it hasn't occurred yet.
Yeah.
So you can drive yourself nuts with what ifs.
Yes.
You can absolutely go crazy with the what ifs. What if they relapse? What if a lot of people do. I mean, if you wanted to I don't know, I could frame this for you to make some sense of it. I mean, the fact of the matter is I think something like 50% or more of marriages end in divorce. Why aren't people walking around on eggshells every time they say I do? Are we going to get divorced? Are we going to probably
or possibly
statistics?
There's
probably
always a
it's probable, but no one's freaking out about it. You know,
no, but it's
because it's so. I think we feel like we have a control over that in some way. Like, no, not if I have anything to say about it. You know, like my grandparents were miserable for years. They stayed married,
suffered in silence.
But like with relapse, it's scary, and a lot of people live in this fear. But one, if you're listening to this and you are in recovery, like do me a favor and communicate with your spouse about where you're at. And that means honestly, if you feel squirrely, be honest about it. Let them know. And let them know what you're going to do about it. Don't just end it there. What are you going to do about it? Start taking new actions. You can communicate things. You can do something for your recovery to make yourself more resilient so you don't turn back to drugs and alcohol to cope. And then for spouses, kind of what you were saying, it's about developing resilience in all phases of your life. Mm-hmm. It's not just here. This is just one of the symptoms where it shows up because it is a very immediate danger if you're with someone who's in early recovery. A lot of people relapse. They do. I'm not going to lie. A lot of people relapse.
Yeah.
And a lot of people have a really hard time dealing with the what ifs of it all. Like, guys, this is what life is like. And it never really goes away completely. That's just,
not in
that's
this
a
life.
fact. It
It'll
never
always be
completely goes away.
Yeah.
Ever. It doesn't.
Right.
It doesn't.
And there's always a possibility that you can go back to your shitty behaviors because, your brain had wired that way when you were young. That stuff doesn't go away. You can rewire your brain, but it's not, those pathways don't go away. You can still go back to that time. So this is always a possibility. It's always a possibility that you can go back to your old ways, and that's scary. But again, I do not focus on that too much. I know that sometimes it can be somewhat of a survival mechanism, or trying to, you've had trauma. There might have been hurt in your relationship. So these kinds of things popping up are going to make you hypervigilant. They're going to make you.
Yeah. It's a good segue into hypervigilance, which is another one of these big factors that make early recovery so freaking difficult.
Yeah. Because
hypervigilant is a result of being in survival mode for a very long period of time.
Yeah. And it's meant to protect you because it's a response to trauma, abuse, or even prolonged stress, which we all have prolonged stress in these relationships. So it's natural to be this way. So I don't want anybody to feel bad that they're feeling this way, but it's not going to go away immediately because it can take 1 to 2 years of consistent behavior changes from someone who has harmed us for us to feel safe again.
That was your experience for the most part. It might have even been longer than that.
Oh,
right?
It was longer than that.
To feel completely safe?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, we had
many years.
We had history, so you think about how long was it crazy? Well, it's not going to just fix itself in like a year.
No,
it doesn't.
Won't. And it's not just like something
some of the
that
big
you can
layers.
turn
It's
off.
like an onion, like little layers come off at a time, and there's like some of the worst stuff gets better, and that it gives you hope. And like that's something we should mention is that we were able to get through this because we saw hope when we were able to get through things we ordinarily didn't get through. And so early on, you didn't have to be so hypervigilant about the bank account anymore, which was a huge source of stress for you.
Yes.
So you let that go. Well, all it did really was reveal another layer of hypervigilance around you protecting your emotions and what you would actually say out loud for fear of upsetting me.
Yeah.
And then once we dealt with that, it revealed another layer of hypervigilance. Mm-hmm. Like this took place over the course of years. This was like year 2, year 4, year 6. Mm-hmm. Like it comes off in layers. Like if you're going to do this and you want to end up like we did, you got to be in this for the long haul, and you got to want it so fucking bad.
Yeah.
Both of you do.
Both.
You both have to want it as bad as you've ever wanted anything in your life to work, because it won't happen naturally. You have to force it. Like
Yeah.
you have to force it.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of effort. It's not just like this organic, like, oh, everything just gets better on its own. Like we thought that way. We thought that way. We really did. But then we ran into some issues.
We were so naive.
We ran into some issues, didn't we?
Yeah.
Like you can't bury that stuff and expect it not to come back. It will come back.
Yep.
Eventually it does.
Yeah. So just letting go of that hypervigilance, it doesn't just happen. It's something that you're going to have to give yourself time, and your partner who is in recovery has a lot to do with that. They need to make a safe space for you. And that I was going to suggest that couples who are in early recovery listen to the podcast together. Make it a date. Make it a conversation piece. We have some wheelies that do this, and it has been huge for their recovery process. Huge. Like, big deal. Like, we're trying to speed up the process, which I don't know if you can technically speed up the healing process. It doesn't necessarily work that way.
I think that you can show someone an obstacle that they're going to have to climb. You can just show it to them more intentionally.
Right. So just listen to it together, and that will help you guys. It'll help both of y'all. Yeah. All right. So we talked about resentment. We talked about relapse, building trust. You want to go on that one?
That's such a little by slow process. Early on, you will start to rebuild trust pretty quickly. And so let's timeline it here. Like I think some of the immediate fears of a relapse start to disappear after about a year. Like some of the really bad stuff, like the first 6 months or so, you're going to be scared. If you've dealt with someone who is kind of cagey about their recovery and they're flaky about it.
This is the second time you said cagey. What does that mean?
I like that term.
What does that term necessarily?
Being like closed off, like not letting you in. Like being unclear about my intentions or where I'm really at.
That's the first time I've ever heard you say that word.
Seriously?
Yeah. That's why I recognize it. HSP here. I overanalyze things. Keep going.
So, man.
Sorry.
But yeah, building trust. Like early on, it's going to be like, I mean, some of like the most immediate stuff is going to get better. Like, right, you can trust someone's going to come home when they say they're going to come home. But it won't go away completely. It's like little things. But here's how you build trust: with experience. The same way it was broken, with experience. You know, you can forgive someone if they screw up a few times, but when they screw up all the time, that becomes the new norm. To establish a new norm, you have to repeat something over and over and over and over.
Exactly.
So it takes a long ass time. Think about how long it was bad. It takes about that long to get good again. Yeah. And then along the way, we love to do this when we're in addiction recovery, is hold it over your head. Like, how long are you going to keep holding this over my head? How long are you going to keep bringing this up?
That's not giving you a safe space.
You son of a bitch, you did this to me for like years. What do you think?
Yeah.
Like, here's where I've always been with this, is that if there is distrust, I earned every bit of it. It is earned distrust, and I can deal with the sour taste from it. It's part of it. My job is to hold space for you as you recover on your terms and on your time.
Yep.
My only job is to keep doing what I'm supposed to be doing. It's to keep showing up.
Yes,
it's
and
to keep
having
doing
a
the right
space
thing.
for us. But it's not our job as the spouses to rebuild the trust. That's not how it works.
It's your job
to just say forgive, or I forgive you for everything you've done because you've gotten sober and all that. That's not how it works. Our brains don't work that way. Our bodies don't work that way. We can't just forgive things that have not changed. Our body is meant to protect us. Our mind is meant to protect us, and it's not forgiving for a reason.
It's using that pattern going, hang on, red flag.
Yes, I'm trying to protect you. That means don't forgive yet. So it's up to you, the person in recovery, to hold space for the spouse and to actually rebuild it by doing the behaviors that are necessary to rebuild the trust.
Yeah, and if you want to rebuild a relationship, your role as a spouse is going to be to give them a chance. At some point, you have to just kind of go hands off and be like, all right, then prove it, without trying to control it, without trying to you have to give someone the chance to hang themselves.
It's all about communication too, though. I've seen some things where I'm like, are y'all communicating?
Do y'all talk?
Like, do you talk about things? This is a whole other episode I think that we need to have on communication.
That's the next one on your point. Adjusting.
Well, yeah, but that's okay, we'll get there in just a minute then.
What were you going to say? I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say that I feel like there's some couples who don't talk, who don't have deep conversations, who aren't really talking about how they feel or what they expect, or, there's just not communication, and it blows my mind. And I'm not seeing, like, that's intimacy. Having communication and talking about things is true intimacy. And I'm seeing where that's lacking, like even in recovery.
My experience with a lot of this is that people think that when you get sober, cleaned up, that you get closer. But let's look at the baseline for all of that, right? What kind of couple were you before all of this? If you weren't having really deep, close, intimate conversations before, you're not going to have them again until, or not.
Well, you're going to have them now because you didn't have them before.
Right. But you can do it, but you have to learn how. Like we talked about all these like unhealthy dynamics, those exist. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of just emotional numbing that takes place, and neither of you do much of anything to talk. Like when something gets uncomfortable, you'll go do something, whether it's like shopping or just getting out of the house or cooking or doing something to just forget about it.
Yeah, or just
doing something. And we use substances and things like that. But you have to start to have, like when you've disengaged emotionally, you have to re-engage emotionally. And that means starting over and learning how to talk about your emotions. Like I've said before, like a lot of men are not well versed in the language of emotions. And that's not an excuse. You need to learn.
Yeah.
You need to learn how to do that. Like you can't go to the bank and say, well, I didn't know I didn't have the money. You son of a bitch, you're an adult. You have to figure it out. Even if you didn't know, ignorance is not an excuse. You cannot be an excuse. You just have to figure it out. So it's a tough one. A lot of people expect this like knight in shining armor to come out the other side, and it's just not the way it is.
Yeah.
Like sometimes you'll find that person again if that person was there.
If that person was there. Sometimes they just weren't, and that's just not who they are.
Yeah, and you're just holding that hope, hoping this person that comes out the other side is going to be that person.
Yeah.
They have to work toward it.
Yeah.
And they have to work really hard toward it. And it's possible, but it's unlikely because it requires a lot of effort and a lot of desire and willingness to change.
Yeah.
And a lot of patience too.
Yeah, for sure. So the next one is going to be, I almost wanted to go on a rant on this, fear of triggering them to drink or use.
Rant. Let's hear it.
So I think that this is taught in a lot of programs, and I think that maybe it was taught at your treatment center, where it's like basically you got to keep walking on eggshells and make sure they have a safe space so that they don't drink or use again, and blah, 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 blah. Why is that their responsibility to make sure that you're not drinking or using? Like, you're separate people. I don't know. You as the addict, what do you think about this?
I think it's crock shit.
Yeah, it is a crock of shit.
Okay, and think about it, right? So if it holds true, it should go both ways. So you can't you couldn't make me stop, right?
No.
So then how can you make me start? Like,
right. It's bullshit.
Now you could create an environment. Someone could argue you could create an environment that is untenable for someone in early recovery to live in.
I understand
that. I believe like social learning theory is the basis of our course.
I get that.
And that is possible.
Alcohol from the house when you came home.
Didn't have to.
I did all those things because I supported you. I get that. But I never, ever had a fear of triggering you to drink or use. Because fuck you. I have feelings too. I have emotions as well. Yeah. You are my partner, and I should be able to speak whatever I need to say to you, and you should be able to hold space for me. And if that's going to trigger you to drink or use, then we have bigger issues here.
None of what you said was wrong just now. But I want to say, contextually, if you're dealing with someone who doesn't have those tools and that's the expectation, it's an unfair game you're playing because you're expecting someone who cannot do much of anything by way of adulting.
They are emotionally immature.
To hold space, to do all these things.
They are children.
You have to tiptoe about it a little bit.
I do.
And you listen, as the listener, you get to decide what your tolerance for that is. I'm telling you right now, Paige had 0. But I also was very accountable here. And I was like, you know what? Like we talked about triggers when I was in treatment. Everyone's like, triggers. I thought it was complete. A lot of it's just complete bullshit. You know what? Everything is a fucking trigger.
Everything's a trigger.
That's
why we don't do trigger
drugs
warnings.
And alcohol all the time, and I didn't really need an excuse for it. Some things put me in a mindset where I was more likely to, like really stressful situations, or if I felt overwhelmed, I was likely, or a lot of emotional pain, I was likely to do that. But it's my job to manage that stuff, right?
Yes.
It's not the world's job to control my environment to the point where it's just going to be safe. It's like putting baby bumpers all over your house all the time. Like we were against baby bumpers too. Like we didn't, you're going to bump your head a little bit and that's okay.
I'm a little old school with stuff like that.
Like, listen, we didn't have knives laying around or anything,
no,
y'all, but we didn't do like what I think a lot of new parents do.
Yeah.
With the crazy, but listen, like if you feel like someone is triggers, listen, this is just my perspective. I can only speak from my perspective, but I understand that's not everyone's perspective. If you feel like triggers are a serious problem for you, this is why things like sober living exist. It is a great stepping off. It's a kind of a transitionary place where people can get exposed to triggers and then have to go home to a safe environment. So over time, you kind of work yourself back into full-fledged society so that you're not left to your own devices. Now, is it realistic for everybody? No, it's not. Is it arguably still kind of band-aiding the problem? Maybe, but they've got good success with it. And I can't argue with that it's helpful. IOP is kind of similar. The step-down IOP programs where you go for like 3 hours a day for X amount of days a week and then you kind of taper down. It's helpful. It's helpful to learn how to deal with life sober. But I feel for spouses because this was not us at all. When I came home day one, I was like, listen, it is my job to learn how to live in this world, in a world that consumes alcohol for any reason. And I can't control any of it. I have to learn how to live in the world. So I told you day one, you can have alcohol in the house. It's my job to learn how to be around it. It's not your job.
I respected your recovery.
It's not your job to censor my life to the point where I can be comfortable.
Right.
I told you that. And this is just my perspective on it. Fucking come at me. I don't care. This is just
I don't really care either. But also, but I'm not telling spouses to like go off on their partners. Okay. That's not what I'm saying. It's like there is obviously a way to communicate with your partner about things that you're feeling and using I feel statements and all those things. But I find that a lot of spouses end up keeping their mouth shut because they are scared.
Oh,
That's what this is about. It's because they are scared.
They don't say anything.
So they don't say anything because they're like, I feel like I can't bring anything up because I'm scared they're going to relapse. But again, it's about the behaviors and not the substance anyway. So you need to be focusing on their behaviors and not them really relapsing.
Like you can't even talk about normal, like the electric bill was higher than usual this month.
I guess
I'm scared to say anything.
Just anything life related, or maybe your emotions or how you're feeling or all those things. It all boils down to how you communicate with them. And if they're not willing to hear you or accept it, that's not your fault. If they go drink because of something you said, that is not your fault. But I obviously treat them like a human and don't go off on them, and lose your shit on them.
If someone's that bad though, I would make the case that they probably do need to be in some kind of like a transitionary program.
But this is a common thing because they've been taught. I mean, even, certain addiction counselors will tell you to, be careful. Don't trigger them. Don't act like.
Call me old school here, but it's not the world's job to make sure that I'm comfortable. It's my job to make sure I'm comfortable with the world.
Yes, but I know that as spouses, we do need to offer some support. That's why I feel like we did a really good balance here. I wasn't completely rigid with all of this shit because I had a life too. I have feelings too.
This is something that comes up for a lot of people though, and it's tough to navigate. And especially if, once again, you're not the type of couple that just communicates very well at all.
Right. But anyway, just communicate if you can and talk. And it's okay. And if they do relapse, it is not your problem. It's not your problem. You have to deal with it, but it's not your fault.
Yeah.
Okay. The next one is going to be adjusting to a completely alcohol-free lifestyle and being able to socialize with friends and family. So I'm assuming this is from somebody who does drink occasionally as a spouse or partner. And now that their partner is sober, they feel like they have to completely remove alcohol from their life. Right. Which I did. Whenever Matt got sober in the beginning, I did stop drinking at home. I, chilled out. And it was nice because I was like, okay, I'm going to chill out too. I can grow up a little bit with this too. I was like, okay, fine. But
we were probably both drinking a little too much.
Yeah, we were. I mean, we were in our 20s.
Not when Sid was born, you weren't.
Well, I was still drinking
before that.
But yeah. Oh yeah. We partied. We had fun. So I didn't go completely alcohol free. Like when I'm with my family, we drink. When we go out to restaurants, I drink. We used to go to our friend's house with our kids and their kids, and Matt would be the only one not drinking. We would still socialize and go do things. And Matt wasn't uncomfortable with that. Like you were like, okay, I'm not going to miss out on everybody's lives just because I have my problem. It was really easy for you to deal with it. And for me, I mean, I respected that, but he also respected my want my autonomy. Yeah,
Yeah.
he respected my autonomy as well. So I just don't think that we have to completely put it out of our lifestyle just because our partner has the problem.
You don't have to, but a lot of people elect to. A lot of people elect to do this because they just don't want to. It's almost like, why would you have that hazard around if it's possible?
Yeah,
You know?
completely
So a lot of people,
understandable.
I think that for the most part, what I see from couples going through early recovery is that they will completely stop drinking. But do it because that's what you want to do. Don't do it and then find yourself spiteful and angry about it. Like, be true to yourself on that.
Well,
If you don't have a problem, it's probably not going to be much of an issue for you. But it does change the dynamic of what fun looks like and what socialization looks like and what you do for like fun.
Yeah, but I know a lot of people, well, some people will stop drinking just because they have a bad reputation with it. Like they look at alcohol as something
Oh, it's like ruined
super
for
bad
them.
because it's ruined for them
like,
because
F that
of
stuff.
what their partner, which is fine. Y'all, Matt's drug choice was like everything. So it wasn't, alcohol was not like his.
I didn't discriminate.
I mean, yeah, he did all the things. Yeah, he did. He was an asshole when he was drinking towards the end. Like there were moments where I was like, fuck, this is not cool. I'm not digging this. Like, what are we doing here? But for me personally, I still like to enjoy a cocktail now and then. And Matt likes it when I enjoy a cocktail.
Drunk
every
girls
now
are
and then.
fun. I will always say that. They're still fun. No less fun.
So, I mean, if you are choosing to go alcohol free because of your partner, that's great too. And adjusting to that lifestyle may be difficult because it's you're having to change your social circle and your friends and family, or you can go the route of just having sparkling waters and make mocktails with your friends and family and still socialize with them. But
y'all, you have to talk. You have to talk about this shit. If you find yourself, this blows my mind because I've seen this and I've read this more times than I can count on TikTok and whatnot in comments. People will be like a year sober and they'll be afraid to like go to a friend's house where there's alcohol and taking their husband who hasn't been drinking. I'm like, do you not talk about this and how he feels around it or any of it? Like,
well, I went to the bachelorette party earlier this year and somebody asked me, my sister-in-law's.
You went to bachelorette party?
Oh my gosh, I went to Santa Fe.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, this year's a blur, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah,
I was like, who got married? I remember now. Yeah.
My brother.
Chan. Love you, Chan.
Anyway, so I had posted about it in the community and somebody asked me how you handled that with me going out and doing things like that. And I guess I understand the question, but I was also like, I just went and lived my life in a way. Like I get to do these things too. I'm not giving up everything just because he has to give up everything. How messed up is that for you to ask me to give up everything that I would like? That's almost controlling and isolating in itself. Like just talk and communicate. Now, if your partner is in early recovery and they're like, I'd really appreciate it if you didn't drink. Like, okay, you can respect that too and support that, but also do what you want.
Yeah. You have options here.
You have options.
You don't have to stay around. If
Right.
that's not something you want to do.
Right.
You don't have to. It's a decision you get to make. Right?
I got a lot of shit for this on TikTok, by the way.
What? Who cares?
I'm just saying,
Who
it was
cares?
really
Listen,
funny.
a lot of people are going to say it's unsupportive if you don't support them or whatever else. Listen,
I disagree.
from where I was sitting is that this is a problem that I had to deal with. And I didn't just like, if I was going to,
Oh, shit.
if I was going to stop drinking and it was going to be miserable, I would have kept drinking. If I had to remove my desire to drink, I had to ruin it for myself. I had to come to terms with the fact that every time I drank it, I ended up being a mess. And I had to learn to love life more sober than drinking. Mm-hmm. The desire is no longer there for me. I don't have the desire.
Yeah.
If I was like white knuckling it, I would just start drinking again. Like, what's the point? What is the point of living life where you're just avoiding it all the time? That sounds miserable. And looking around at everyone else and being like, I can't, they can, that's not fair, this sucks. I hate that. I would say you're doing it wrong.
Yeah, I agree.
You're doing something wrong.
Yeah.
Like, you're missing the whole point of all of this.
Yep.
If that's what you're doing. And that's likely to cause some issues in the relationship. Listen, if support for you looks like I'm going to do this with you, I will support you. Kind of how I did I said I was going to do with it whenever you got pregnant. I was like, when you get pregnant, I'll quit with you.
Yeah.
That lasted about 4 hours.
Yeah, that was not long.
That was the first time I realized I had a drinking problem, actually.
Yep.
It was whenever I tried to quit whenever you got pregnant. But listen, it's your prerogative. Do what you want. But from where I'm sitting, I don't think that you're responsible necessarily for making sure that No one has triggers. Like, what are you going to do? You're going to ride into Budweiser during the Super Bowl and tell them not to air that commercial because it could be triggering.
Right.
Like, you could drive around. Like, there's so many alcohol ads.
Everywhere.
It's all over this.
It's everywhere. There's nothing we can do about that.
This country is obsessed with alcohol.
Yes, it is.
Obsessed with it.
It is.
All right. So it's going to be there.
Right.
All right.
But responsible adults who can drink responsibly. Okay.
I hope we can be mature enough to, if you're in recovery, to a point where you're like, listen, if you want to handle a drink like a responsible adult, you do that. I have a poor track record of it. I don't.
And you even work with people who their spouses still drink occasionally too. It's not like it's not a big deal for them because they're doing the recovery the right way.
Yeah, I think so.
So we are
like an hour and 10 in.
Yeah.
We're going a little long. Whatever, man.
Okay, well, let's not like word vomit on all these. Let's just kind of like hit them on the
Mourning
point.
the old life. That's a big one.
Mourning the old life and accepting a new start. We
kind
of talked about that
a little bit.
Yeah. So it's okay to mourn the old life. I still mourn it sometimes. There are still times where I'm like, I said this recently where I'm like, I do miss some of our old times.
I was like, do you miss the old me? And you admittedly said sometimes I do.
Sometimes.
And you get teary-eyed thinking about it because we will never get to enjoy like Mai Tais on the beach or like it's at our daughter and son's wedding. Like, I'm not going to toast champagne. Like, I ruined that for us.
I'll get you a Topo Chico.
Well, I ruined that for you. And that sucks for you. And it's okay to say that. It's fair to say that.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Yeah.
I accept that. I accept the penalty that comes with that. I accept the responsibility for that. And I accept some responsibility for the sadness that you feel.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry.
But I'm grateful for where we are now. So it's two thoughts at once. Like, I can be sad for that stuff, but then also be like, okay, man, things are great now.
If you think about it long enough, like, you can get way more excited about the life that is to come.
Yeah.
The new relationship is way better than the old one.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It took a while to get there, but it's better.
But since you were a big part of like my later childhood, like too, that kind of changed things. But that's just life. So in accepting a new start, you just kind of
it's a new one. It's never going to be the way it was.
Yeah.
That relationship is dead.
Okay, so what happens if they don't grasp how their actions have affected the spouse or family? So people struggle with this.
They're not going to early on.
No, because some might, but they're not going to grasp it. It's going to be surface level.
They will understand.
The first amend process, if they're doing AA, if they're doing the whatnot, is going to be very.
I think anyone should apologize whether or not you're working 12 steps or not.
I agree with that
Apologies
shit too,
are
but
in
I
order.
don't know. All I know is the AA steps and how you go to the amend steps. And the amend step for the first time was just very surface level. I don't even remember what you apologized for. I just know that it was probably like, I'm sorry, I used drugs. I'm sorry I wasn't there for you.
I remember talking to you and asking you, like, is there anything I haven't covered here? And you were like, no, like, it covers it. We're good.
Yeah. But we didn't realize until years later how much
the depth
damage,
of that,
and how much there was actually
it felt like we were in the clear.
Yeah. But that's why it's important to redo those throughout your lifetime. I mean, that's just life. Like, you're just going to keep doing them. Stay in contact
with each other. Honor your experiences.
Yeah.
Acknowledge when you were wrong. Make that right. But early on, you are going to want them so badly to understand the harm they've caused. If I can help with that at all, we recorded a few episodes called If You Were Sent This, Please Listen. It's like parts 1, 2, and 3.
Yes.
I do my best anyway at helping people understand what the spouse is feeling and what they're going through, having been, around 3,000 amazing women for the most part, but men as well who have gone through this and the feelings they have that they have trouble communicating. But they're not going to get it early on. They're just not.
Well, also their brain is like completely rewiring, and they're not able to really think at that level yet at all. Remember, we said this takes years, and they are probably like a 17-year-old child coming out of this, and they're not going to be able to grasp the damage that has been done.
There are some people that have trouble taking responsibility for their role in disagreements without a substance. Like, it's a difficult thing for a lot of people to do, especially if you were raised in some of the older generations that kind of live this way, where you can take a whole lot of responsibility for the harm they cause other people. It's like, it's all your fault kind of stuff. Like, it's tough, man. It's really tough.
Yeah.
And part of that is also like, you're going to be living with some anger around this, because you will be walking around with these wounds that you feel like need to be tended to, and they could really help healing process, and they're just not going to do it, and you're going to be pissed.
Yep.
So get ready for that.
Yeah. Another one was some feel an apology isn't required because they were drunk when those things happened and can't remember.
That's so stupid.
I know. Thank you for saying that. Thank you so much for saying that, because I was going to say the same damn thing.
That is so stupid.
I can't apologize because I just don't remember it since I was fucked up.
Okay, if you get up in the middle of the night and you pee in the corner or in the closet like some people do, you're saying you don't have to clean that up or apologize for it because you just don't remember it? That's a convenient loophole.
Right?
If I don't remember it never happened. I don't got to apologize for it. That wasn't me.
That's so childish. That's so childish.
Tell the cop that whenever you run your car through someone's freaking, lawn or their tree in their front yard. I don't remember. Oh, just say that then. You're free to go.
You're good. Yeah.
Freaking miss me with that.
No, that just
stupid.
Just know that that's really stupid.
So stupid.
Did you do any pees? Did you pee like in random spots whenever you were fucked up?
No, I wasn't like that. I wasn't the pee in weird spots guy.
You know that's really common.
I know.
Like
I know.
Really
common. I was really drunk. It was the middle of winter. And I walked off the back porch. And we had this big pecan tree out behind the shed. Remember that?
Yeah.
In Dallas?
Uh-huh.
And I was leaning up against the tree, relieving myself. And I got really dizzy and just lost it and just ate it.
As you were peeing?
Midstream. Ate it.
Did it get all over you?
I don't know. I'm not really sure, honestly. I just kind of squirmed and got my pants back up, and then I just got really comfortable because when you lay a certain way, the world stops spinning.
Was that the night that I just left you?
Yes, I found the spot in the earth where I wasn't spinning. It was my sweet spot out there by the between the gas meter and the pecan tree.
That's right. Now I knew that.
In the middle of February,
I remember that story.
And I came back in stumbling at oh, it was late.
It was late. It was 10 or 11, actually.
I bet you it was 20 degrees outside.
I was eating my cold Chinese food on the couch.
You just left my ass.
I did. I was like, I'm enjoying my me time right now. I don't need his ass.
She didn't even order me any freaking sesame chicken.
I didn't. All right. The next one is feeling isolated as they connect with their sober community. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I have experience with this because I felt extremely alone when Matt was doing all of his meetings and he was connecting with people and he was texting people and calling people and he would come home and tell me all these stories and this and that, and I'm just like
all these people you don't know,
people I don't know, because y'all, I knew everybody that Matt was surrounded with before recovery. We were close with everybody. We had a big group of friends. I knew everybody. For the most part, we've always
had the same friends.
Yeah, but I didn't really know your drug dealers that well. Sometimes they would come over.
Nor did I really, honestly.
Yeah, but you would invite them over, and that used to piss me off. Anyway, that's something so completely weird. Different. But I would feel very sad because I felt like I'm not involved with this. I've been involved with so much of his stuff. I knew his friends. We talked to his friends. But then he got into the sober community, and I'm completely out of the loop. It's not something that I can relate to. And this one was really hard for me to deal with. And I think we talked about it a little bit. It wasn't big. It wasn't that big of a deal for us to discuss it, but I would still talk to you about it and say hey, I'm just feeling a little lonely here, but it was nice that you would at least talk to me about the things that were going on in the communities, but I did feel pretty isolated from it.
I think we talked about hypervigilance and fear of relapse and all this stuff. What an actual fear that I have is that you're going to get too far away from me. I'm not going to be part of your growth, and you're going to evolve, and I'm not going to be in the loop. That's a scary thing as a partnership.
I bet that's probably what I was dealing with.
A lot of that is that very thing. Mm-hmm. It's as you're a couple and you're really in a relationship and you're doing it right, you're growing alongside each other, you're working on different things, but for the most part, you're in communication about where you're at. When your best friend feels really far away all of a sudden, our kids go through this in middle school. They get really hurt whenever someone's changing and they're not communicating it. It's I'm not part of your life. I'm not important enough to be involved in this. You're growing without me. You're learning new things and new experiences, and I'm just not part of it because it makes you feel so small. And that happens in recovery. At some point they start to grow and they're doing their own work and therapy and everything else, and they will feel far away, and it's scary, and it's a scary dynamic. Once again, if you're going to do this, it's hard, and this is why it's hard. Mm-hmm. You have to you have to work through the stuff if you want it.
Find your own community. I think that would be
We have one.
really helpful. Yes, with our community or, our independently strong community, that would be really helpful because then you're going to feel like you're doing something for yourself that's just for you that will help your relationship going forward too. So that's the thing, because the sober community for you, it was not just helping you, it was helping us as well, but we don't see it that way because we're not a part of it.
Right. Yeah, it's scary feeling when the people that you love the most start to feel far.
Yeah, so find something for you as well, and that might help you feel less isolated in this one. All right, so this one.
You love this shit, don't you? This is your favorite.
Okay, so I'm grateful for AA, and I've learned a lot from AA, but there are some things that just pissed me off about the program and Matt doing it. So this one says, being told AA quotes as a protection mechanism so they don't have to validate or be held accountable to what we are trying to recover from. Like, that's in the past, or one day at a time.
Live and let God, let go, let God, all that stuff.
Yeah, that works for y'all. That's for you.
These are meaningful for someone.
This is meaningful for you in your recovery, but quit putting your recovery talk on me and trying to make it like you're my sponsor in a way. Like I learned a lot from this shit.
Here's how it works. Like there's an old saying in recovery circles, like live and let live, right? But someone in recovery might use this phrase to imply that you just need to mind your own damn business and not interfere with my behavior. Especially when you're concerned about things like relapses or harmful behaviors. It's not what it's intended. It encourages people to focus on their own recovery and respect other people's rather than meddling and trying to control other people. Mm-hmm. It's not meant for you to avoid accountability when your wife is trying to bring up a valid concern. Another one is one day at a time. It's used as an excuse to avoid planning for the future or taking responsibility. It's just one day at a time. Like we've mentioned earlier, like, no, like bills come due every month. Rent's due every month.
You have to be prepared.
Yeah.
For things.
It allows some people, like they just use it to brush off other people's concerns. It's just one day at a time. Like you could say like, I'm really worried about you. It's just one day at a time. Just one, and just started on some tangent about all that shit. It's not how it's meant, right? It's meant to encourage sobriety by focusing on the present moment. That's all it's meant. Progress, not perfection, is the worst one. Okay, I got some beef on this quote as it is. So here's what it's used for. Like someone will say, well, it's progress, not perfection. It's used to downplay relapses. It's used to downplay harmful behaviors. It's used to downplay these like vicious fights you might have. It's suggesting that as long as I'm making some form of progress, I should not be held accountable because progress is better than nothing at all. You can't hold me accountable for my mistakes because I'm trying to make progress. All right. That's not even the fucking quote. The quote comes from, I could tell you even 58, 59, page 60 in the book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And it says, we are not saints. It's spiritual progress, not perfection. Mm-hmm. It's spiritual progress, not perfection. In that part in the book, the context is referring to trying to live by a higher standard of values. And that is not perfect. We're not saints. We don't claim to be. We're just trying to grow along spiritual lines. But someone left off the spiritual part and it's run into this progress, not perfection thing. No. That's not how it works. That is weaponizing and bastardizing a quote that is meant to talk about spiritual progress. Listen, no one's perfect, okay?
Yeah.
And that's all it's saying. We are not saints. We don't claim to be perfect. We're just trying to live by spiritual lines. That's it.
Yeah.
But it's spiritual progress, not perfection. But people just bastardize it. It's progress, not perfection. No, you can really run with that and make that a really sick and toxic quote if you want to.
Absolutely.
So yeah, there's a lot of that crap that you'll get into.
Yeah, and the one where that's in the past or the past is in the past or whatever, forgive and let go, all that stuff. We did an episode on forgiveness that might be helpful for you on what we talk about in this, where people are talking about, well, it's just in the past, you got to get over it. It doesn't work that way.
How about this one?
Fucking work that way.
Keep your side of the street clean.
No, I don't like that one. I say that sometimes on. It depends on the context, obviously.
It's about taking responsibility for your own actions instead of blaming other people. But oftentimes people in AA circles or NA circles will come home and anytime you hold me accountable.
Yeah. Just keep your side of the street clean.
Yeah. Quit calling me out on that very valid concern that you have.
Yeah.
Keep your side of the street clean.
God, it's so rigid and like.
And if you don't know any better, you're like,
mind.
am I doing it wrong? Like, do they know something I don't know? And they're going to make you think you're crazy. And it's just.
It's crazy. Okay. The next one is, it's always about them and their recovery. What about us? Well, that's what TUFO is here for. And that's all I've got to say.
Hi.
Yeah. Keep listening to us. Check out the community. Check out the program if you can. That's literally what we're doing, is trying to make it about both people and not just them. And if they're listening with you, they'll be able to recognize that and be able to move forward with it.
Yeah. If you're someone in recovery that's listening to the show right now, like, dude, high five.
Yeah. But we have it.
Girl, high five.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. We have a lot. I mean, we sell a lot of rocks, so it's pretty awesome.
That's amazing. It just tells me that you're actually invested in the process of rebuilding a relationship.
And the relationship and yourself and all the things. It's beautiful. It's amazing. We see you. Keep it up. The last one is having vulnerability to reconnect. This is what we were talking about earlier when I was like, how do you become vulnerable again? Well, it's going to take some time, and it's going to take them providing a safe space for you to become that way. You can't just be vulnerable immediately, because it's not going to feel safe until they prove to you that it's safe for you to be vulnerable.
Yeah. Emotions like vulnerability, things like trust, they are easier to earn than they are to re-earn. So like when you first meet someone, even if a first impression is pretty good, like you are likely to trust them. But once it's broken, getting it back is really tough, especially if it's been broken like 100 times. Mm-hmm. So people are always asking us, like, how do I trust again? Mm-hmm. They have to do trustworthy things.
They have to do the things. It's not up to you.
Your only job is just to give them the chance. That's your
right,
only
that's
job.
Your only job.
And that's a decision you can make. I'm not saying you have to do that, but you just have to give them the chance, and then they can either let you down or they can do something trustworthy, which builds trust. But it's not a switch that you flip. It's like there's no like mental hack to learn how to trust again. And we will not teach you how to gaslight yourself. That's not what we do here. To tell you that you're the problem, you just have to trust again. You need to submit. You need to any of that. That's not what we do here. Like there, conversations like that happen every day on the internet. You can go find them. They're not happening here. No offense. Actually, yes, offense. I meant offense.
No, that's dangerous.
It's just not a good idea to me. It's not wise to tell someone to do that. You will trust when the time is right. Yep. You will trust when there's something to trust. That's how it works.
Yeah, I think it's irresponsible to just say forgive.
Same thing with vulnerability. When you feel safe again.
Yes, you have to feel safe in order to be vulnerable. And it'll come out in different parts of your life. You'll be able to be vulnerable in certain things, but not everything.
But
it's going to take time.
You can't walk into this thing expecting it's just like, oh, like he's going to get sober. And like with that comes trust and vulnerability and this connection. Over time,
the reality is that does not happen for
years,
a long time.
Years. It just takes years.
Yeah.
It takes a long time. So if you're in this and it's early and you feel all these things, it's normal, and it gets better if you're sticking with it moving forward. But for some, it doesn't, because no one's actually changing. They're not really doing anything trustworthy. They're still doing the same stuff, and you can't order something that they're not selling. You can't. Mm-hmm. It's like walking to a Chinese restaurant, ordering burritos. Like, we don't make that here. You can't ask for something they're not selling. And you can't say, like, how do I trust them again if they're not doing anything trustworthy? If they're breaking your trust on a daily basis, I know you want to trust them because you want safety. You want a healthy relationship again, but they're not selling one. Yeah. They're not offering one. And you can't get it if they're not offering it.
Yeah. And sometimes the betrayal is way too much. And if you don't have these years in you, that's okay.
It is.
It's okay. We're going to love you through all of this, all the different things that you decide to do. This is just the realities of a recovery that we wanted to share with y'all to help you make the decisions that align with your values and what you want in life, because you matter too. It's not just about them.
Stay or go, but always grow.
That's so cute.
That's what we're here for.
Yep.
All right. That's all we've got. A little long on this one.
Yeah, you might want to break this one up.
No, it's an hour and a half. That's good, man. We talked about doing more episodes a week, but this should fill people's cup. It's an hour and a half plus a page's perspective. That's like 2 hours plus TikToks. Like, that's plenty. I hope anyway. I hope we've answered some of your questions. I hope that's somewhat more clear. Hope so anyway. Oh, hey, and things to look forward to. Finally got this technology figured out, I believe. We've got some guests lined up. Really, really excited. We will announce them once we've got them actually booked, but we've had conversations with them. They've agreed to come on the show. We've got some people with some really cool perspectives, some creators that we like, some authors. Some really cool conversations upcoming. So stick with us. This thing's only going to get better. This is just the beginning. We are just 2 years old, y'all. We're babies. We are babies in this space. Imagine what this is going to look like in 2 more years.
Yeah.
It's going to be awesome.
Yep.
So cool.
So much growth. So much growth, y'all.
It's gonna
for
be
y'all,
so
not just us.
Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here with us, for supporting us, I think we'd probably be having these conversations even if no one listened, but it's just a lot more fun when people listen.
I enjoy these conversations.
So thank y'all. Thank y'all for being here with us and supporting us. I'm so grateful for every one of you. Until next time, I am Matt.
I'm Paige.
And we'll see you.
Bye.